Hey everybody, welcome back. So since this is primarily a car YouTube channel, or at least that's what I'd like it to be, we're going to go ahead and talk about some cars in this video. Specifically, my cars, the ones that I've owned or driven in my life as daily drivers, because there are some cool ones that I did get to drive daily that I didn't necessarily own. So we'll go through that list. We'll talk about all the cars I've owned and kind of how this came to be, because you guys will see that, first of all, fun fact, I'm only 29, so you'll see that I've owned, a staggering amount of vehicles for a 29-year-old. I think the average number of vehicles that most people own in their lifetime is 8 or something like that, and I'm on my way to tripling that number at this point. So I don't have the total number off the top of my head, but we'll count them out as we go through them, and should be fun. Should be a couple good stories in here for you guys, and hopefully you learn. If you want a lot of cars, you learn what you want to do, or if you don't want a lot of cars, or you learn, don't emulate me for sure. So let's start at the beginning. So when I was in high school, I was very graciously allowed by my stepdad to drive his 1976 Ford F-150. That was a very special truck. That was the truck that I learned how to drive manual on. He taught me how to drive stick, and I got to drive that truck to and from school every day. And that truck was awesome, man. I tell you what, there's nothing like an old vehicle. You get the smells, the smell of that raw gas in there, and this thing was a beast too. This is a pretty intimidating truck for a high schooler to drive. As their daily driver, especially in Michigan in the wintertime, which is where we lived. So this truck had a carbureted engine and a manual choke at the time. So trying to I don't know if any of you have ever tried to start a vehicle with a manual choke, but that is one sensitive piece of equipment when you're trying to sit there and dial in that oxygen, that fuel mixture just right so that the engine doesn't stall. Sometimes some mornings it would take me like 25 or 30 minutes just to get the truck started. But it was cool. It was awesome that I got to drive it. I really appreciate my stepdad, Will, for letting me use it, and kind of give me a little bit of a sense of independence, so to speak. And which, for a high schooler, that's huge, especially when you get to drive something that cool to school every day. It's very, people notice, and people are, wow, look at that truck. That thing is cool. So that was the first vehicle I ever drove regularly. Now, the first vehicle I could say that I really, really owned outright was a 1996 Dodge Neon. And for those of you who live in the Midwest, you know that the Dodge Neon, the Chevy Cavalier, the Buick Grand Prix, the Pontiac Pontiac Bonneville, all those mid to late 90s economy cars are huge. Just everybody's got one. Everybody in the Midwest or lives in the country, knows that that's probably the first thing, if it's not a truck, that you're going to have as your daily driver. So mine was a 96 Neon. It was red. And it was frankly a piece of crap, but it was my first car. We paid $500 for it, and that was just the cost of getting, the tow company wanted to, gain back from towing it, because I think it was a abandoned vehicle. And, I had a lot of fun in that car. We used to do stupid stuff in it. When I got it, it had no rear. The rear struts were shot, so you could literally get like on top of the trunk and like bounce this thing around, and it would bounce like a trampoline. We used to show people that in the parking lot. They get a kick out of it. And then a little bit more irresponsible, there used to be this bridge down the road from my house that had a little bump in it, and when we would all get in the Neon, we'd hit that thing going like 80 miles an hour and just try to see if jump the Neon, get all four wheels off the ground. Which nowadays I look back and it's amazing that we're not all dead, or that car actually took it. And the car actually did survive like 2 or 3 jumps over the course of its tenure with me. So that was car number 2, 1996 Dodge Neon, red Dodge Neon. So I drove that around until I enlisted in the Navy, all the way back in 2011. Seems like an eternity ago now. And after I got in the Navy, I ditched the Neon completely. I had my mom sell it. And once I was able to, I got myself my own brand new car. I got a 2012 Chevy Sonic LT, and specifically I got the one with the turbocharged 1.4 liter engine. And this is a stick. I forgot to mention the Neon was an automatic, and that's important. We're gonna track how many sticks I've had too. So Chevy Sonic LT sedan, turbocharged, white, and that was a cool car. And at the time, being a new guy in the Navy, I really wanted to keep it conservative. I've always been kind of, into like muscle cars and horsepower and speed, but I knew it wasn't the time for that. Starting out on my own, living my own life, so I got some kind of conservative, a little fun with the turbocharged engine, the stick shift. But it was a good car. It served me well while I was stationed in South Carolina, and then a couple years later, I moved up to upstate New York for some training, and my dad, Scott Hadley, who's also got a YouTube channel, and I highly recommend you check him out too. He's got we're gonna do a shameless plug real quick. So my dad's got a YouTube channel. He does he owns a really old 1800s farmhouse plantation house in Maryland. He's got a lot of cool content over there, running this property, doing some hunting stuff, hunting tips, all that kind of stuff. So if you're into that, I highly recommend you check out my dad's channel. I'll put a link in the description below, so you guys can go over there and check him out. So my dad, when I was a kid, he had a 1988 Jeep Grand Wagoneer that he put a lot of work into, and I have very fond memories riding around in this vehicle, going off-roading, going to off-road club, camping in the woods. And it was just a lot of fun. Once again, old vehicles, super unique. I love them. They just don't make cars like that anymore. And so I always kind of, had this feeling that I wanted a Jeep too. So when I got to upstate New York, it was going to be winter time soon, and I knew I was going to need something four-wheel drive because the Sonic was only a front-wheel drive car. So I got the idea, and I made it work to get rid of my Sonic, and I got a 2013 two-door soft top manual black Jeep Wrangler Sport X, I think is what the trim actually was. But it was basically just a step up above, your lowest Jeep Wrangler. And when it comes to Jeeps, I'm a huge purist. Gotta be two-door, gotta be soft top. Although I will admit later on I did wish I had a hard top, because the soft top, it just deteriorates so quickly, dude. And really, that's probably the vehicle I've owned the longest, was that Jeep. I owned that thing from 2013 all the way until 2018. So that was the car I had when I drove it cross country all the way from upstate New York to western Washington when I went to my ship. Met my wife in it. I got friggin' married while I had that car. So that car saw a lot of history. And it also, once we got headed to shore duty back in South Carolina, that made another cross country trip down to Charleston, South Carolina. So I highly recommend Jeeps. They're great vehicles. They're great versatile vehicles if you don't want a lot of fancy gadgets on there. I know they can get really, really expensive up on the higher end trims and have a lot of like creature comforts, but I highly recommend it, like an old Jeep, for just liability. I think they're great. I'm sure you guys have your own opinions on Jeeps, but I think they're great vehicles for versatility. And mine survived 2 cross country trips with no issues. Although I did crack a windshield both ways, but it's kind of a running joke in our family. We can't make a cross country trip without cracking a windshield. So far, it's held up. So when we got to South Carolina, at this point, I almost forgot. So backing up a little bit, before when I met my wife, she had a Lexus RX 300, I'm pretty sure, and that thing was falling apart. So we decided to get her, while we were in Washington, a new vehicle. So we got a 2016 Dodge Journey Crossroad Premium, I think. It was all-wheel drive. It was white. We've had a lot of white vehicles, and that was a really good car for family starting out. Little wagon. Not too much to say about it. It's a pretty standard vehicle. For those of you who own the Dodge Journey, you know what I'm talking about. It's just basically a small Dodge wagon, kind of a weird, I'll say a weird cross between like a minivan and I don't know. It looks like a minivan on the outside, but it's like a hatchback wagon type thing. It was great. It had a lot of power, dude. I love Chrysler. I love Dodge vehicles. You can say whatever you want about the quality, but the way they overpower all of their vehicles is just fun to me. Like that 3.6 liter V6 that they put in everything still is one of the best engines I've ever had in a car. That thing is just, it's so much fun. It's so overpowered. No family vehicle should be pushing 300 horsepower and be able to, give you the giggles like one of those things can. So that's what we left Washington with, was that Dodge Journey and the Jeep. We got to South Carolina, and then we became homeowners. So shortly after that, the Jeep started looking pretty small, pretty, two-door Jeep, tough to get kids into, tough to do anything with, doesn't have a bed, can't really pull things around, or haul anything. So I started getting to the back of my mind that I was like, it's getting to be pickup truck time, I think. So my wife was at work one day. I was on Auto Trader a little too long, and I sent her a text message, and I was like, hey, I'm gonna go look at this truck over at this dealership, and that turned into trading in the Jeep for a 2005 Chevy Colorado LS. And this is kind of what I would say is the beginning of the downfall of every financial decision I've ever made when it comes to vehicles. This was definitely the catalyst that started everything else, and you guys will see it. If you sit there and kind of think about the timeline of how everything happened, this is the point where it's like I started just making ridiculous decisions when it came to vehicles. So I got this 2005 Chevy Colorado, and it was a piece of crap. I don't ever recommend buying a Colorado or a GMC Canyon of that generation, especially not one early on. It just had a lot of issues. I mean, when I had it, the thermostat was out, so the engine would heat up to basically whatever the operating or the ambient temperature was, because the coolant was just constantly flowing through it. And the high mount brake lights tend to leak on those, so unless you want it to basically rain on you in your vehicle whenever it rains outside, I don't recommend getting one. I actually ripped the brake light out of it and filled the hole with a thing of flex tape. Flex tape's awesome, by the way. That stuff really does work. So it was a lesson, I'll say that. Definitely do your research when you buy a used vehicle, because I did not do enough research when I got that one. I was blinded by the feeling of need to have a truck as a homeowner, and you really don't need one, although it is convenient to have. So I had that Colorado for a while, and it was an okay truck. Besides the problems that I talked about, it was okay. I learned a lot mechanically on that truck. It was the first vehicle I ever changed out spark plugs on. The spark plug changed out also turned into replacing an ignition coil when I snapped a captive bolt on one of them. And then replacing that broken thermostat I was talking about was also a trip to having to get the wheel off the driver's side, pull open the fender liner just to get at the side of the engine, drain the coolant system, refill the coolant system. So it was, for a guy that mainly only does oil changes and tire rotations on his own in his own home garage, it was one of the bigger jobs I'd ever done. So I learned a lot on that truck. Later on that year in 2018, we got into a car accident in December. We were on our way to go look at some Christmas lights, and I T-boned. We were in the Dodge Journey that we brought over from Washington. I T-boned somebody when they pulled out in front of me when I was going through a green light. And I'll say that was probably one of the scariest moments of my life, because we had our kids with us at the time, and we didn't know it, but my wife was also pregnant with our son. And to, not see the vehicle until it's, probably 2 car lengths in front of you and have no reaction time, is pretty terrifying in its own right. But then you don't have any time to react after that. And then, if you guys have never been in a car accident, it's a lot louder than you think it is. Like, your ears instantaneously start ringing, those airbags go off, it's loud as hell. And once I opened my eyes and my ears kind of started unmuffling, the only thing I could hear is my kids screaming. I was like, oh my god, what am I going to turn around and find? Thankfully, the kids were fine. Everybody was fine. My wife did have to go get checked out for a little bit of bruising in her ribs and her knees, but the car seats did their job. The kids were great. And if I can find them, I'll show some pictures of the accidents and all of that. But so that obviously means that we needed to get a new vehicle. And we were super hyped up on safety after that accident. It was like the forefront of our mind. And so I'm sure you guys can all guess which brand we went with. Having a high safety reputation, we were looking at Subarus. And this is also where my love for Subarus started. So we got my wife a 2019 Subaru Ascent. I think it was just a premium. I don't think it was anything major. And I gotta say, I loved that Subaru. And I wish we had kept that Subaru for a lot longer than we did. Because it was a great car. All-wheel drive, turbocharged. I want to say it was a turbocharged... I don't think it was a Boxer 4. I think it had 6 cylinders. And I'll look that up and see for sure, or somebody can call me out in the comments saying that I don't know anything. Either way, turbocharged, so that thing would scoot. I mean, it was a huge vehicle. It's still a relatively new vehicle nowadays, as far as Subaru's lineup concerned. Replaced the Tribeca. And they're great. They're great third-row SUVs. They're quick. They are, good off-road. They got a lot of space. They have a lot of... it's very comfortable inside. And until that point, I was a staunch, just only American vehicles, domestic or nothing. And that really shifted my mindset on cars. When I saw just the quality of the interior, just everything felt solid, everything felt like that it would take anything. It didn't feel fragile inside. It felt like it could hold up to stuff. So that's how we ended up with the Subaru Ascent. Now, my truck was starting to bug me. It was starting to get on my nerves, starting to get on my wife's nerves. My brake light switch went out one day on the way to work, so I had no brake lights. I was tire fixing stuff on it. It was a headache and a liability as far as we were concerned. So we started casually looking, and we found a certified 2014 Ram 1500 4x4 crew cab at our local Ram dealership that we could, reasonably afford. And so we were like, hell yeah. So we went and got that. I actually picked it up. We kind of on a whim went to go look at it, and then I bought it on the way to work when I was working a swing shift that day. So it's kind of funny to, go to work in a brand new truck. And this, I'm thoroughly convinced, is the point where I should have stopped. I should have just kept the Ram and everything, I probably would have been happy if I had just kept the Ram, but COVID kind of got in my head and messed with my brain a little bit when that happened. But I love my Ram. I thought that was a great truck. Really solid trucks. I love Ram pickups. Had a lot of power. I had the 5.7 liter Hemi, so plenty of power. I never got to tow anything with it. I only hauled a little bit of stuff, but I did do a trip or two to Michigan and a trip or two to Maryland to see my dad from South Carolina, and it did great on every road trip. Never had an issue with it. So yeah, highly recommend it. Highly recommend Ram pickups. So then we had the Ram and the Subaru, and with the third kid on the way, actually I think we already had Grayson at this time, so we started feeling like we were going to need more space. The Subaru and mid-size SUVs, they got a decent amount of space, but if you have more than 2 kids, it starts to be a little cumbersome trying to get everybody in and out, grocery store parking, all that. So we became minivan people for a little bit. We bought a 2017 red Chrysler Pacifica. So we went back to Chrysler, back to the 3.6 liter V6 engine. And that thing was good. It scooted. It was pre-owned. They're good minivans. They got a lot of features, but we just decided it wasn't, it wasn't really for us after a while. We didn't feel like minivan people. So then COVID happened. And when COVID happened, I don't know if it was the cabin fever that got in, because the military kind of mandated me on you will not go anywhere except for home and work. So I don't know if it was that happened that kind of messed with my brain or what, but that truck started looking real boring after a while. And I'd been watching a lot of the Grand Tour at the time. So, watching Jeremy Clarkson, Richard Hammond, James May mess with all those fun, fast cars got me wanting a fun, fast car. And for those of you who've watched my first video, you already know what that's going to turn into. I went and I got rid of my Ram, I traded it in, and I got a new 2020 Dodge Challenger Scat Pack. And I love that car. I wish that I never had to get rid of that car. But the bottom line on that one is that we could afford it, but we couldn't really afford it, if you get what I mean. Could we afford a monthly payment? Yeah, absolutely. Were we able to really do anything with the kids or, any of that, do fun stuff? Not really, because we were paying for the car. And after a few months, I started to look at it, and I was realizing that, and I started to feel really selfish about it. I'd love to own another one someday. I think I will have another one someday, perhaps, if the conditions are right. But it just wasn't. It wasn't the right time. I'm glad I had it. I'm glad I had the opportunity to own one. It was fun while we had it. But yeah, it just wasn't the right time. Feel free to check out my video on it, though, if you want to see more about it, and more about the car itself. I do have a review video, walk around, startup, and all that good stuff. So then later on, like I said earlier, we were realizing we weren't really minivan people, so we got we actually went and traded in the Challenger and the Pacifica in the same day at two separate dealerships. This is the longest, one of the longest, most exhausting days I can remember in my life. I'm going to go to two different dealerships and buy two different cars, do two different trade-ins, and all the haggling and stuff associated with that on the same day. I remember getting home and just being wrecked. So we took the Pacifica to the same dealership that I got the 05 Colorado from, and that my wife left with a black, I want to say it was a 2016 Chevy Tahoe, and that was kind of where her love for the Tahoe came into play. And that was an okay truck. It was pre-owned, so it did have a few issues, and then we did end up having to get rid of it kind of unexpectedly, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. So she got that, and then I got the Nissan Frontier, which my second video is about. So if you want to see more about my Nissan Frontier, go ahead and check out that video. I'll put links down in the description below for them. And I like that truck a lot. In fact, if the uncertainty of getting out of the military didn't weigh so heavily on me, I would probably still have that truck right now. And I wouldn't have gone any farther than that. I've kind of realized that I really like JDM vehicles. I think Japanese vehicles are very well made. I think they have the right mindset of, if it's not broke, don't fix it, which is why a lot of their interiors look old, dated, boring, whatever you want to say about it. You can go in there and everything will work on it because it's all made of plastic and switches, and there's no digital, there's very little digital anything in there. Not like the vehicles that exist nowadays. So after we got the Frontier and the Tahoe, the Tahoe quickly kind of crapped the bed on us. So my wife went out with my dad when he was visiting. They went and got some dinner at some KFC, I think. And when they were coming home, the Tahoe just shut off in the middle of the road, just dead, nothing, off. Shifted itself electronically to park, kind of like lurched and did one of these, like someone had slammed on the brakes. And thankfully it happened in the neighborhood right in front of our driveway, but we were, super confused about it. It took a little bit to get started again. I was like, what the hell, why'd this happen? And the dealer couldn't even figure out. So it ended up starting up again. We took it to the dealer, and they were like, I don't know. We found a little loose terminal on the positive end of the battery. Because for those of you who don't know, Tahoe's on the positive terminal. They have this like crazy power distribution bus that they put on there for some reason, because they can't just, I don't know why. GM electrical problems are real. So they put this bus bar on the positive terminal, and then it goes to all these other things. They found, what they thought was maybe a loose jumper on that bus bar, and they tightened it. And they said, "Bring it back if it does it again." I was like, "Does it again? Like, what do you mean, does it again? What happens when she's going down the interstate? The damn thing just shuts off, and when she's going 65." So we said no thanks to that. She never drove it again after it had shut off on her in the driveway, and we ended up taking it and trading it in and getting a new 2021 Dodge Durango. Once again, back to Chrysler. I've owned a lot of Chrysler vehicles in my life, and once again, 3.6 liter V6. It's kind of the same story for all those Chrysler vehicles. They all have the same engine. They're all just built a little differently, but that car was also fun as hell, man. Dodge Durangos are great. It was only 2-wheel drive, though, because it was in South Carolina, so that kind of doomed the Durango as far as long-term ownership, because, moving back to Washington, it doesn't get so snowy where we live, but the surrounding area where we travel, it does snow a lot, and having to go through the Snoqualmie Pass pretty frequently, it just wasn't going to work out long-term. So... But we did keep the Durango until we left South Carolina. My wife and I did have to kind of split for a few months, live in separate places. She moved to Washington ahead of me while I finished out my time last year. While I was living in South Carolina, as I was doing the job researching, the job prospects, looking into, having to commute maybe from the west side of Washington in Kitsap County to Seattle every day. The biggest gripe I think I said in my Nissan Frontier video was that the fuel economy wasn't very good, and I was looking at pretty significant fuel costs. One, living in Washington, and two, having a vehicle that gets like 17, 18 combined fuel economy. So as bulletproof as that VQ40 engine is in that Frontier, it's not very fuel efficient at all. So once again, the gears started turning in my head, and I ended up getting rid of the Nissan Frontier and getting a 2018 Subaru Impreza base model, just regular Subaru base model sedan, which is a good car. Had the CVT, had the, I believe it was just 2-liter 4-cylinder boxer engine. And I still really like Subarus. They're great cars. The Rally Heritage is cool. The all-wheel drive is cool. They're zippy. They're fun to drive. And it was a great little commuter sedan, and it, made a great cross-country trip. Actually, that thing was a tank, because I was driving west on I-90 from Spokane, and it was pre-owned. I think the headlights probably should have been changed out sooner than they were, but I couldn't really see in front of me with my low beams. I was passing a semi in the dark, and I look down, I do a gauge sweep, I look around, and I look back up, and there's this, I'm not sure if it was an elk or a mule deer or a whitetail. I didn't even have time to see super hard what it was. There's a carcass in the road in front of me, like no time to react, and it was huge too. I couldn't get out of the way because there's a semi next to me that I was passing, so I just kind of braced for the impact, and I smoked this carcass with this Subaru, just this little tiny Subaru going like 75 miles an hour, and I swear I was expecting every single warning light to pop up on the dashboard in front of me. I expected to look down and just see a Christmas tree, and I didn't see anything. And frankly, I couldn't even tell that the vehicle was damaged until months later. I saw a very, very, very slight bend in my fender from that impact. So they're just awesome, dude. Subarus are great cars. They're tough. Say what you want about vape juice and head gaskets, but I personally feel if you take really good care of them, you do the maintenance when it's supposed to be done, and you don't beat the crap out of them like a lot of people do, I think they're great vehicles. So I got that, took it to Washington, and then we started off Washington with the 21 Durango and the 18 Impreza. And then this year in May, the wild hair started again, and we were also starting to feel the after the winter with the Durango being 2-wheel drive, a few scary calls with snow in the Durango. We knew that we really needed to get a 4-wheel drive vehicle before this coming winter. So in May, I was also kind of getting that itch again, new vehicle itch, because I can't seem to last more than a year with the same car. And so So I ended up finding my current vehicle, which is a 2013 WRX hatchback, at a dealership in Western Washington, and we were gonna use the equity in the Impreza because it was paid off. It was fully paid off, to get that WRX and have a little bit of a down payment for my wife's Tahoe, and that's what we did. So I went to get that WRX. So I'll talk a little bit about that real quick. It's very important for you to be knowledgeable about vehicles that you purchase, and if you're not knowledgeable about vehicles that you are purchasing, if they're pre-owned, please bring a mechanic with you, as I found out. And this, I mean, it's kind of tough because unless I had brought somebody who really knew like the Subaru 2.5 liter boxer engine, they wouldn't have been able to tell me that it was the way that it was. So I'll kind of tell this in the same way that it happened to me. So I got the car, I brought it back to Eastern Washington. When I went and looked at it, it just aftermarket parts everywhere. Cobb this, Cobb that, Cobb intake, Cobb exhaust, bypass valves, flex fuel kits. It was definitely modified. And I kind of, I gambled. I wanted to do, I don't want to do right by my wife. I want to do right by my family and get the family vehicle that we really needed. So I just kind of like, well, I've wanted a WRX. I'm pretty sure I can, work with this and get it going. So I pulled the trigger on it. A month or so later, I finally was able to take it to Portland, Oregon, to Surgeline Tuning, and they're great down there. If you have a custom vehicle, if you have a vehicle that needs to be tuned, Subaru especially, take it to Surgeline. They're awesome. I took it down there, and because I knew it had been previously owned. It was previously obviously tuned because when I got it, the rev limiter was set at 5,000 RPM, which is it's not normal. And if I really got on the accelerator, it would cut fuel and give me a check engine light, and it would feel like the engine was just dropping out of the vehicle whenever that would happen. It would scare the hell out of you. So I knew it needed to be looked at by a reputable person, a reputable tune shop. So I took it down there, and I was like, I really just, I want an inspection done. I'd like it tuned. Because I have no idea, what's on it. I don't know what someone else has done to it, what the map looks like right now. So please just, get it to be a fun, reliable daily driver for me. So we dropped it off there. We left. We went to the Portland Zoo. And a half hour later, like almost exactly a half hour later, I get a phone call from Surgeline. And the guy on the phone, he's like, "What did you do to this thing?" And I was like, "I didn't do anything, man. I just bought it." And he's like, "It's rough." And I guess the whole engine was just plumbed wrong. Vacuum lines in the wrong spot. Air intake to the turbo was loose. Coolant line in the turbo was loose. So basically the engine was suffering from an air leak, a coolant leak. The fuel pump ended up not being the right fuel pump for the vehicle. And little did I know that on the way down, I had put in ethanol-free premium fuel into it, which is not good for forced induction vehicles, I found out. So it just showed up there a mess. They had to replumb the entire engine. They had to, fix the air leak, fix the coolant leak. And the whole time I was just amazed that it had even made it, the 3-hour drive to Portland in the first place. And so they ended up having to keep it overnight because they just kept finding stuff like the fuel pump. They had to, drain the fuel tank. They found leaves in the fuel tank, cleaned out the filter, swapped out the fuel pump with a good one. And the whole time I'm just sitting there like, oh my gosh, this is going to cost me a fortune at the end of the day. But they finally got it on the dyno the next day. Finally got on the dyno, finally got everything squared away, and it's tuned now. It's a great, fun car to drive. I tell you what, I love driving it. It's making, on the current map, which is a 19-pound boost map, it's making about 346 horsepower through the wheels. And I can't remember the torque number off the top of my head. I got the dyno sheet in the car. When I make a video of the WRX, I'm going to do it soon. I'll show you guys the dyno sheet as part of that video. But yeah, just very high and low story on that one. So the moral of the story on that one is please do your research. And like I said, it's tough for me. I wouldn't have known looking at it that all that stuff was hooked up wrong, but hey, what can you do? So 2 days later, after I got that car, we were able to get my wife her 2022 Tahoe. That thing has been kind of a headache so far. We've had a lot of weird things from the factory. It's got about 7,000 miles on it right now. It's a good vehicle, good size vehicle, plenty comfortable on long road trips, but there are some GM electrical issues that we're already finding on it, and just weird practices. Turns out I found out this year that because of the chip shortage, they're shipping vehicles without some parts installed. Because I noticed that the parking sensors in the front and rear weren't working, so I asked the dealership about it. And they claim they don't have them, and I was like, okay, that's weird. I have a button on the dash. Why would I have a button on the dash if I don't have the parking sensors? And you know, they were like, let me check on that. And they were like, oh yeah. The factory didn't ship it with the CPU chip installed for the parking sensors because of the chip shortage. They're going to do a recall later on to retroactively reinstall it. So if you have a vehicle and you've been wondering, why are my parking sensors not working? There's your answer. It's coming soon in a recall near you. And yeah, that's where we stand right now. 2013 WRX and a 2022 Chevy Tahoe. The year's been crazy. Inflation's been crazy. A lot of crazy stuff going on in the world right now. So, you know, I've been trying to find things to do to, you know, try to get a little bit extra on the side, and, you know, I really just need a hobby. So I'll close out the list with the most recent vehicle I purchased, and this one's really exciting. So this one is I'm you know, finally not swapping a vehicle out for another one. This is the third vehicle now. We own 3 vehicles now. Just this week at auction, I was able to get, for what I feel like is pretty cheap, a 1986 Subaru Brat. And I'm really excited about this car. It's old. It's old. It's dirty. It's a little banged up. It doesn't run right now. Hopefully all it needs is a fuel pump. Fuel pump's on the way right now. But I am excited about this car. This car is going to be awesome. It's going to be a lot of fun to work on. I can't wait to get to drive it once I get it running again. And I'll be showing it to you guys here real soon. I'm gonna make a video of that, so you guys can check it out. I'll show you exactly how it came to me from the auction. And then I'm going to start a little bit of a series on it. We're going to, you know, I'll bring you guys with me. We're going to get this Brat up and running. It's all going to be raw. I'm not going to filter anything out. So, you know, if I put this fuel pump in and it doesn't start up, you're going to see, you know, you're going to see the failure, and you're going to see my reaction firsthand. So if you're you know, interested in watching a guy who barely has no idea, or barely any idea what he's doing when it comes to restoring cars, try to restore an old car to somewhat working status, you're in luck, because that's what's coming up soon. So looking forward here in the next, you know, little bit. We'll do, once I get the WRX cleaned up a little bit, because it's pretty dirty right now, I'll do a video on that for you guys and show you all my mods. And then we'll do a video on the Brat. Not sure which order that'll happen in right now. I think I'll probably do one on the Brat first, just because it's a little bit, you know, less work on me right now, just to walk out there and go film it. But yeah, really excited. A lot of cool stuff coming up, so please stay tuned. Please like and subscribe if you want to see more. Sorry this video was boring. I know it was a lot of rambling, but hopefully it was some good stories. A lot of cars over the years. Anybody got me beat? Let me know in the comments. Let me know if you got, you know, let me know if you've got more cars on your list than I do. But I'd be willing to bet that I beat most people so far on vehicle ownership. And let me know your cool stories. You know, talk to me in the comments about your cool stories, if you've had these same vehicles as I have. You know, what you like about them, what you hate about them. Yeah, that's about it. Until next time, guys, have a good one, and we'll be seeing you again real soon.